everyone, welcome to Raising Vibrations with myself, Simon. Today, guys, I'm going to be doing a video where I'm just going to be chatting a little bit about some ideas that I have relative to astrology, letting you know what type of astrology I work with, like why is it that I use evolutionary astrology, why is it that I look at the world the way that I do in terms of like EA, and just general sort of like rambling that I'm going to be feeling that I want to chat about, basically. So it's just like a conversation, not really about any thing specific, but just some things that I have on my mind that I'd like to share with you guys, and hopefully it will be interesting to you as well. So it's kind of like a lengthy vlog where, yeah, exactly that. I don't know how long I'm going to chat for. I just feel like having a communication, and I feel like kind of doing it in a way that's, broadcast to the whole entire world, because that's kind of the way that my own chart is working at this point in time. I suppose I could start off over there in terms of one of the reasons as to why I do this YouTube, this YouTube story, this YouTube channel in itself. I'll start with my own like astrology chart. Like one of the interesting things that I've learned through using the art of evolutionary astrology is really being able to become soul-centered. In other words, looking at the nature of your life from the perspective of the soul, which includes this like multi-lifetime / multi-dimensional perspective. You're not just observing your life from this point of view and this life. You're observing it from the nature of how it has been and where it's come from and what it's been working on and all of that type of stuff. So for my own charts in itself, I have Pluto in the 10th house, which for many of you guys know that have that symbolic placement, or have watched the Pluto in the 10th house video, will know that the soul has been actively trying to understand itself through the lens of, just being seen in the world, okay, like public recognition, as it were. And, this has been a story that my soul's been working through for a little bit. I don't think this has been I haven't been doing this for many lifetimes. I know that because the placement of Pluto in the 10th house is right in the beginning. It's not really sort of like ingressed in quite a lot. So I feel that there's this new beginning experience for me. And with the recognition and being outside and, desiring to learn what it's like to be a human being through the lens of recognition and being exposed, as it were, I've noticed that it kind of like goes in conjunction with the nature of the nodes of the moon in my chart as well. They all sit in the 5th house in Gemini. I have the North Node, which is completely conjunct the North Node of Uranus. In the 5th house. So I have this North Node in the 5th house in Gemini, and I actually have this thing called skip steps, which I'll maybe chat about as well in terms of the idea of skip steps in itself. But I have this skip step connection between my nodes, which means that I have been trying to work on actualizing myself, but yet I have been missing out a couple of components to the story, and so therefore I've spent one lifetime trying to do this but not actualizing, and so on and so forth. And when I found EA and I started understanding the nature of the soul in terms of its multi-lifetime stories, I really connected with the nature of why my life has been the way that it has, which is extremely powerful for a lot of us. We're definitely in a space within our consciousness that is constantly seeking to grow, constantly seeking to evolve. It's only due to the conditioning patterns that have been imposed on us that have not allowed us to actually become awakened to these things being actual reality. We've experienced these conditioning patterns have just been, follow this road, do this, the next thing. And if you fit into that sort of cubicle box, then, that's who you are, and if it doesn't fit who you are, then you repress that aspect of yourself, and you just conform, you cut edge, you edit yourself out. And obviously there's many implications associated with that in terms of psychological. But the point here is that, I just became, or we can just become, this edited version. And what I've noticed is that through becoming, like I said, grounded in EA and looking at my life through the way that it is and understanding these questions, etc., I found the true essence of my soul, which is amazing. And one of those aspects was recognizing that I have lots of information and lots of things to say, and a natural curiosity for searching for the truth, at least natural law in itself, like understanding the life through this metaphysical way of orientation, like how do I fit into the world. And I've been doing that, yet I haven't been able to actually speak it. I haven't been able to actually say anything about it. It's just been kept sort of in the back of my consciousness. And like I said, with all the editing, etc., I just haven't been able to integrate myself into the world in that way. Like I've always found things to be like, oh, this is okay, I can do this, I suppose, etc., but nothing was really passionately appealing until I, discovered this type of astrology, and I have been following it for like ever and a day. Like I can't begin to. It's almost 15 years that I've been following EA, or no, not EA, but astrology in itself, and I've always had that book with me. I'm going off in a little bit of a tangent over here, but I'm going to bring the story back to the beginning. And so I followed this book. Like this book has followed me, should I say, for the last 14, 15 years of my life. It's never left my side. I've always had that sort of genuine interest in it. And that's the one thing that has had the passion, is that I've always reverted back to the book. But that connection towards finding the purpose in EA and skip steps and creative self-actualization has been that all these truths that I've been seeking have been through the description and the language of EA. In other words, I've been able to use the language of EA to express the innate and deep truths that exist within myself. Yet, I haven't been able to express them in a way that has been able to be understood by others. So I've kind of got this Neptune in the third house thing, where I can have these deep truths, but yet I can't connect to people in a way that makes them understand the nature of what I'm talking about. And so therefore I've led myself into recent lifetimes in which my soul has not been able to creatively actualize itself. It's just said, you know what, I'll just sit over here in a corner and, watch potatoes grow, for instance, and tend to my sheep, as it were. So in terms of this lifetime, in terms of EA, in terms of the power of it, in terms of the conversation that I'm having with you right now, and then the big picture, why this video and this YouTube channel exists, because I found this as an opportunity to actually express the nature of my truths and to bring them forward into the world. And because I have the north node of Uranus, not Uranus the symbol, but the north node of Uranus, which I'll get into a bit later if you guys want to be interested in the nodes of planets, is rather just not the south nodes. But the north node of Uranus conjunct my north node of the moon, so it's saying, hey, by the way, buddy, this is the future. I'm here communicating with you, Gemini. I'm doing it in a creative, self-actualized way. In other words, creativity and putting stuff on YouTube, etc., and presenting myself the way that I am. And then, of course, with Uranus, objectivity. So here I am having this conversation with you, and at the same time, you're watching it in an objective fashion. In other words, on a screen, for instance, your tablets or your phones or your computer. So I'm doing it, and this is awesome. And the only way that I actually managed to get hold of this type of specific understanding and to be in tune with the nature of my own soul has been through evolutionary astrology. Because the core archetype of this teaching, of this spiritual understanding of this type of astrology, is to not look at astrology in the sense of, hey, this is my personality, but to look at the nature of what has come before this lifetime, and then observe where we have been, and then from that point of view, take a decision or have a decision, empower yourself. Literally, you're empowering yourself because you're shifting your consciousness, at least your perspective of the nature of yourself, from outward personalized identifications, i.e. I'm Scorpio, so therefore I'm this, that, or the next thing, to, hey, I'm an individual person. That even though my sun sign is Scorpio, I'm still an individual person with another 9 planets plus asteroids, like in different configurations to the next person that's also a Scorpio. And so therefore I become more specific on the nature of my own soul's journey and my own individuation and my own collective understanding of where it is that I am within the consciousness and within life itself. So the power lies within that experience, and it focuses on that. The principles are that there is no such thing as one, or that, one size does not fit all. So like I said again, somebody has, sun in Scorpio and another person has sun in Scorpio, yet you're going to fundamentally be expressing those energies differently because you might be needing Scorpio lessons in a different way to the other person. And so therefore these generalizations are, in a sense, not, they don't help you at all. They do to a sense, because obviously they give you a layer of identification, but yet when you assign yourself to those identifications, you deny who you naturally are, because those definitions might not even be in line with what it is that your soul is actually trying to do on this planet at this point in time. So, in terms of what I've chatted to you guys about now, I can assume that you've kind of got the gist of, again, this type of recording, this type of video. You know, ramblings, but also at the same time trying to let you know about the nature of why it is that I use evolutionary astrology, why I think it's the next step in understanding the nature of who you are, and the interest associated with it needs to grow. And one of the interesting things about the nature of this archetype, in other words, this type of astrology, is that it hasn't been lost, but in the sense with the so this is exactly why it's been so difficult for me to communicate the nature of my consciousness, because as I went through that moment right now, that little pause that where I was thinking, I got the totality of the conversation in an instant. I got that download straight away. Yet to communicate almost 10,000 words, it's almost impossible. So I like find myself stuttering because I have this traffic jam of words just, coming across over there. So that's another reason as to why you'll probably find that some of the videos that I do are very fast paced, because there's an aspect of my lessons on Earth that are about integrating a definition or a concept that is so intensely deep, yet can only be that I need to convey within a very short period of time. So I have to kind of like shorten the nature of whatever it is that I'm trying to describe, yet at the same time, I'm conflicted because I'm aware of this, yet I don't know how to actually do it completely all the time. So therefore I have like this massive amount of words that is packed into a very small space trying to describe how the universe works, so I assume you've been picking this up as I've been having this conversation with you. But at the same time, EA and the work that I'm doing, evolutionary astrology in itself has been kept away, specifically, and astrology in itself in terms of its power kept away. And there are many reasons as to why the case. One of them is that if you empower humanity through the understanding of self-awareness, which is ultimately what your goal here on Earth is to do, is to become more self-aware, that's returning to source, that is recognizing the power exists within. If that gets given to every single person, then they challenge the authorital structure that exists, which then causes the people that are in power to lose their power and the illusion over you, which is essentially to say, hey guys, we're human just like you are. We need to eat, we need to go to the toilet, we read books, we have general interests. Yet we're going to create the illusion that you need to be serving us, i.e. the monarchy. I mean, like, honestly, a royal family, right? I mean, there are, at some points, there are some benefits to having some, like an identification of a country that is defined by them. And so this is who they are, and that's an image of the country, and, et cetera, et cetera. But to completely and utterly fascistly give information, or should I say like dedication towards them, is a little bit of a different story. Like the power exists within them and we need to obey it. No, it doesn't. It's not the case. So tangent again, but at the same time an awakening, because that Uranus conjunct that North Node in my chart again is that awakening experience, to awaken people, hence the YouTube channel again. So coming back to the point of EA and it being sort of rejected and not given to people, etc., etc., it's time now that it gets accessed. And again, a big part of this YouTube channel, as you can see on the top right-hand corner, is healing humanity. And evolutionary astrology is based, and it is based on the idea of healing the soul through understanding true and truth, not things that you need to believe in. And this is the thing that I love about it the most in terms of its truths and its principles, is that it's grounded in the nature of natural law. In other words, there is not something that you need to believe in order to see it happen. You just see it for yourself and have direct experience of whatever it was that you saw. So therefore you osmose with a truth that was relative to what you observed, not something that somebody else has told you. And so the simplest way that you can observe it, which is why I have the picture of the tree, in nature. Nature reflects to us natural truth, natural law. And so the experience of observing astrology, not from the belief patterns of XYZ, but from just observing life itself, observing the nature of how things form within nature. So in other words, if you look at the Cancer Capricorn archetype, when we take our principles and our truths, We're observing the nature of protection relative to something that is inherently needing to be protected. So we have Cancer, protection, needing to be protected, in other words, the soft, squishy side, and Capricorn, right, the outer shell. So we can look at a tree, for instance. The bark represents Capricorn. The inside stuff of the tree and everything correlates to Cancer. You can look at your bone structure. The bone itself correlates to Capricorn, solidification, structure, crystallization of something, form. And then you have obviously the bone marrow and everything else that is within that experience. This is the Cancerian archetype, something that needs to be protected, soft and squishy. You observe a crab in nature, for instance, has the exact same thing, right? The soft squishiness, and then it protects it by its shell. So when we observe our lives in nature, and we build houses, we build a protection around our valuable stuff, etc., that exists within our home. So all we need to do is just observe nature to see the truths relative to these archetypes, and then all of a sudden you apply it to the astrology chart. So if you've got, for instance, like for me, I have, what can we chat about? What do I have in my chart that can be specific to that? Well, let's just stay with the nodes, right? So again, you guys know North nodes in the 5th house, so creative self-actualization. In other words, to be here, to make myself loud, to make myself apparent, to be colorful. So what attracts attention in nature? You can look at a myriad of insects, for instance, a myriad of animals that have specific bright colors that create an attention or divert attention from said animal that might be attacking it, etc., etc. There is an inherent way to make something loud. The lion's roar. Funny enough that it's linked with the Leo sign. You can look at the Leo archetype in itself of children, for instance, right? And it's linked with Taurus and Scorpio, actually. Leo, which is a fixed sign, has a natural square to Scorpio and has a natural square to Taurus, and Taurus and Scorpio naturally cross each other. And that's actually the archetype within our consciousness that correlates to procreation, right? To procreate. So what we have here is that we have Taurus, which is about survival. In other words, the necessity for the understanding the archetype of survival. And through that survival, we develop our needs. In other words, hey, I'm hungry, so therefore I need food. Hungry, survival, need food is the description from that experience. Scorpio and correlates to others. In other words, the opposite side of the cycle. So other people's needs and other people's nature, etc., etc. And so when we have the Plutonian experience of Scorpio and Taurus in opposition with each other, then we have the connection to Leo, which correlates to how we creatively self-actualize ourselves. So you have two people that merge Scorpio, right, relative to their personality, 5th house, Leo, and relative to the need to procreate. So they merge together, they procreate and create a child, which is the archetype within consciousness that correlates to that. And so therefore we also then naturally will project into our children the ultimate meaning, which is the inconjunct between Leo and Pisces. So the 12th house or Pisces archetype, which is the last in the zodiac, makes a connection to the 5th house, but it's an inconjunct, which means it's 150 degrees of self-awareness. This is the reason as to why Leos will be able to learn. This is why Leo energy in itself learns awareness of others through this inconjunct, because I think this conversation is quite big, so I'm going to talk about it afterwards. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio all make a connection to each other, and they correlate to survival. It correlates to the nature of how we procreate, etc., etc. And then relative to this conversation I'm talking to you right now, I've got that 5th house, so creative self-actualization, to be seen, and then I have Gemini. So what we have in Gemini is, firstly, it's a mutable sign, and we're looking at the archetype of diversity. So within our nature, we have diversity. Diversity creates the connectivity of everything. It also offers us the opportunity to see everything within our reality. So we have diversity, Gemini, multiple things. It also correlates to the, like I said, because it's a mutation archetype, mutable sign, it correlates to the nature of not staying on one thing at one time, but moving to create the diversity. And so therefore, inherent within the Gemini consciousness or the Gemini sign will be the need to constantly keep on moving relative to relative to relative to relative. And so therefore, it can't stay in one place. So you have the sign Jupiter, which correlates to expansion. conjuncting Mercury, or conjuncting in Gemini, and you have a kid that grows up in an environment where it's distractions, or it gets distracted really easily, and therefore develops all this nonsense of ADHD and all of that type of stuff. But you look at his astrology charts and you look at it through EA, and you see that this is a natural process within this person's consciousness. He would naturally need to have diversity in his life. He needs to be distracted. He needs to observe one thing and then another thing and another thing and another thing. And you'll probably find that there's a reason for that, because there might be Pluto conjunct the South Node and stuff like that, where there has been total resistance to move along. So the soul specifically programs a type of archetype within its consciousness to allow it to actually then move along the process, creating individuality. Yet we live in a consciousness, or in a time, or in a patriarchal conditioning in which we reject other people's personalities because it's not the same as everybody else. So we put them into a bracket, okay? You have ADHD. And amongst other things, for instance, we define them, we categorize them, okay? Every single one of us will have this natural expression of who we are, but we can't express it because there are so many judgments in terms of the way that you need to live life. Yet, so if somebody does come through with this archetype of Jupiter in Gemini, or has an overextensive Gemini, instead of thinking, hey, by the way, why do you actually have this? They go, there's something wrong with you. Do you see the twisted distortions that are associated with this experience? So through EA, all of a sudden you become aware of this and go, oh, okay, well, hold on. Maybe there is a need for this. Why do I need this? Oh, okay, because I actually have da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden you can orientate your life in alignment with your ego, which will then allow you to actually manifest whatever it is that you want to manifest in a peaceful and relaxed way, because you'll know what energy you need to include in your life and what that you don't. So again, passion comes through over there in terms of that conversation, and allowing us to become more awakened to the idea of how important it is to observe our life, not in the way that we've done it before, but more in terms of like alignment with nature and its truths that exist there, and reorientating your consciousness, cleaning your lens, observing life through that way, because nature holds all the truths. You don't need to believe in it for it to exist. That's the thing. That's the beauty of this experience. It doesn't require a belief system. You just observe. And through that observation, and through that deep penetrating curiosity, Gemini, Scorpio, you observe the nature you observe nature, you become aware of natural law, and through that experience you become more orientated towards the truths that exist, and so therefore alleviating all religions, etc., etc. Which is kind of an interesting point that I'm going to bring up over here in terms of religion. EA, for instance, describes a lot of truths relative to the nature of the human condition. We're always in a state of constant becoming, which is why you come onto Earth or incarnate onto Earth. There is a reason for your incarnation on Earth, and that is because there is a constant state of becoming linked with desire. Now, I've opened this discussion up relative to religion, yet what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down and talk about the nature of desire and incarnation, and then link it to the nature of evolutionary states, and then through that, religion in itself. So I hope I haven't lost you, but I'm going to try my best to practice communicating in a way that is audible, tangible, and also at the same time digestible to you guys. So, because we're in a constant state of becoming, the nature of consciousness in itself, when you incarnate onto Earth, there is a separating desire that is linked with the purpose of your life. So, for instance, if we take me again, I have Pluto in the 10th house in conjunct Mercury. This is the reason why I talk this way, because of that conjunction at the top of my chart. And the solar eclipse in Gemini and the moon in Gemini and all those type of things. But more importantly, so there has been an ongoing evolutionary desire to become aware and awake to what it means to express myself in a way that is heard. In other words, to link the reason of my life towards this experience. When one experiences that, when you link this understanding, in other words, this desire, towards the orientation of your life. So in my case, I'm here, I'm chatting to you guys, I love doing this type of stuff. I've linked my soul's desires in with this communication. That linkage correlates to my desires, my separating desires, the reason as to why I've incarnated onto Earth. Because as I express myself, I learn more about the nature of creation through the way that I express myself. And my themes are communication and speaking up and being able to be heard and so on and so forth. So a lot of the work will be about how can I actually actualize my expression, myself, and be heard through the different channels. So it's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's YouTube, it's writing, etc., etc., etc. And throughout that whole experience, constantly aware of why am I doing this? And it is that experience of learning about this question, why am I doing this? Do I become more aware of who I am and my separating desires? And it's through that process do I then change and affect the nature of my evolution. You see this point I'm trying to make over here. So in terms of looking at your own life, when you question the nature of your choices, decisions, life path, etc., etc., ask yourself, why am I doing this? What am I teaching myself in this experience? What am I learning in this experience that is allowing me to become more awakened to who I am? I promise you right now, that is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself, because it's in those moments that you acknowledge the constant state of becoming. In other words, learning more about who you are, linked with the nature of desire. Why am I desiring this? And thirdly, what are my lessons? What am I teaching myself through these desires and through these constant state of becoming questions? When you do that and you link yourself to that, oh my gosh, you start to become openly and consciously awake to yourself. And that's when you can start to make changes within your life. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing this is because I might be exploring more of communication. I might be integrating into myself awareness and knowledge about how to publicize, how to make myself large, how to make myself big, etc. Now, for us, there are many reasons, because the nature of manifestation, in other words, creation, in other words, the totality of everything that exists, source energy, consciousness in itself, as long as there is a desire and as long as there is imagination, and those are linked together, there will be a constant state of becoming, which leads you into the situation of how many lives you're going to actually live. Because if I just go around the zodiac, and when I use the zodiac, I'm just using this form of astrology to convey truths. And so this is another good example of what it is that I'm trying to say over here. With evolutionary astrology, we're not looking at the nature of astrology itself. We're looking at the nature of archetypes, using the language of astrology to convey something that exists so deep within nature, so deep within life, so that you can become more realigned with the nature of who you are and also natural law, right? So EA is grounded in that experience and so allows you to do that. And that's really powerful. That's extremely powerful in that sense. The self-awareness process, especially with the shift and ascension and all of that type of stuff, which I'll chat about as well, because ascensions, there's a lot of distortions around the nature of ascension as well. And we keep on looking to see answers and to find things and so on and so forth. But the irony of the situation is that the more we keep on searching for something, more we're going to be revealed the nature of the truth. We're always going to find the truth within whatever we're looking for. And so it constantly puts you into a state in which whatever you're searching for, you're going to be searching for forever, because you're always going to be constantly just being revealed the truth, and the truth will be found everywhere. And so therefore that search just becomes that. So coming back to the nature of my conversation about EA, and at least what I was sharing with you about the 12 archetypes, was that you can look at the nature of Aries, okay? And Aries correlates to the nature of separating desires. So if you have Pluto in the first house, you're beginning a new cycle, and you're learning more about the nature of who you are through some special destiny. That's the thing linked with Aries, the first house, and Mars, that propels the nature to become on this earth, a special destiny, inherent feeling that you've come here to do something great with your life. So when you have Pluto over there, for instance, which Pluto is linked with the nature of desire, linked with the nature of soul through this paradigm, we're looking at somebody that has starting a new cycle and is wanting to experience everything, explore everything, and needs no limitations. You put this person into a situation in which there are limitations and you get anger because there's a natural suppression of something that requires total freedom. You wonder why there's so much anger in the world. You can have somebody that has Pluto in the second house, or Taurus, And now all of a sudden you're looking at somebody that's trying to understand the nature of wealth, the nature of survival, the nature of needs, the nature of value. And so therefore they can be born into a lifetime in which the contrast is they're born with a family that has 5 brothers and 3 sisters, for instance. So that's very specific. But yet, and the family can't afford many things. And so therefore he lives with a life of poverty, creating a psychological dynamic within himself that allows him to then create a reality where his beliefs are rooted in the idea that he needs to link his self-worth with money because he inherently feels that that's what value is. And then gets disillusioned at the end of his life where he recognizes that that's not what truth value is, etc., etc. And so therefore reincarnates into a life in which he becomes aware, where he's the one person in the family born to rich parents, and so therefore links his self-worth with that, and then gets disillusioned with the nature of all his money gets lost due to some bankruptcy thing, and therefore is left with nothing, and then he's back at square one again where he was in his previous incarnation. Can you see the complexity that is associated with the nature of EA and searching for the nature of your individuality and your soul's journey? We're all of a sudden just becoming completely aware of who we truly are. Multidimensional beings existing on Earth through the human condition, experiencing the totality of creation through this contrasting reality of who am I, right? Constant state of becoming. Pretty neat, isn't it? So again, here I am, Uranus, north node of Uranus, conjunct my north node, complete conjunction, by the way. That's the one thing that's funny enough with my chart. I've got these conjunctions in my chart that are total. Mars and Venus, 16 degrees, complete conjunction. Pluto, Mercury, complete conjunction. Sun, complete conjunction with Pluto, Mercury. Uranus, south node, Jupiter, complete conjunction. And then Neptune and the Moon are in opposition to each other, but yet are in the same archetypes. In other words, 27 degrees, 27 degrees. So there's total madness over there when it comes to those things. It was really, really funny in terms of why I would specifically choose to be born at that moment with those degrees. Yet I really know why they are the case, but at the same time I'm still trying to search for more answers. The point I'm trying to make is that again, through EA and through the nature of this conjunction that I have North Node, 5th house, Mercury, is that here I am publicizing the nature of EA, trying to get it out there. But ultimately what I'm trying to ask for is, hey, by the way, guys, if you start to look deeper into the nature of who you are, you're going to find a goldmine of awesomeness and amazingness, of beauty and the perspective of who you are and what you are. And the more you search for who you are, the more you're going to find out who you are through this video, through evolutionary astrology, through the nature of what I've just said to you right now, like orientating your spiritual truths in relation to nature. You don't have to believe in anything. It exists for there. You see it. So it's removing religion, which then brings me back to my point over here in terms of desire and linking it with religion. So consciousness in itself needs to become more awakened to itself through awareness. And so this process happens through as we incarnate into life. So this is why the idea of reincarnation works. Yet at the same time, we must remember that we live in the physical world. In other words, time-space reality. So we observe the past from the perspective of something that has happened, and we are aware of it. And we observe the future as something that is inherently, we don't know what it is. So it's about to happen, it's unfolding. But we can truly, truly, truly only exist in the present. Past and the future are abstract concepts, yet we define our reality through that experience. It's a linear logical time frame. But that's what you've come here to do on Earth. You've come here to experience limitation. You've come here to experience physical reality, which is why the body in itself has physical limitations. In other words, I'd love for everybody to go, no, don't do this, but to just go and try and jump off your roof. You know that the end result is going to be death or severe injury. You don't do it. Why? Because you're going to die. Yet you inherently are awakened to the idea of a limitation. You can't fly. Right? You can't walk through a wall, physically at least. So the purpose here is to understand and recognize and reorientate your ego to the recognition that you are here on Earth physically to experience limitations amongst other things, and also whatever else I've described earlier in the video. So in terms of the nature of consciousness in itself and becoming aware, you incarnate through many experiences and you become aware, and through the physical body you begin at plant consciousness, at the consciousness of nature, and you become more aware, etc., 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 and then consciousness moves into the human form. Now, when you observe consciousness moving into the human form, what we have here is very dimly lit states of evolution. And these are the type of people that you see that have what is considered to be mental retardation. In other words, retardation. It's consciousness in the human form, but has absolutely no idea how it operates, and so therefore comes through as retardation. And this is a very interesting subject to talk about, because a lot of things that is associated with people that have got retardation in some way is just because consciousness is now forming itself, in other words, existing within the shell, the body, in its newly state. It's fresh. It hasn't experienced what it's like to be a human before, so therefore has its limitations. And through the experience continuously, it becomes more awake. And you awaken to the experiences through disillusionment, through experiencing something, through becoming more aware, constant state of becoming, and through many incarnations. So you move into what is considered to be states of consciousness. So we have consensus states, and this is a really healing piece of information that I want to share with you guys, because it allows you to have compassion for the people that you think and observe to be stupid in a way, all right? It's because there are states of consciousness, people that are awake to experiences. And so what we have here is that first, so we have consensus state, we have individuated states, and we have spiritual states, okay? Just a different way of saying conscious level, unconscious level, galactic experience, right? Seeing your world through the nature of the universe. So in consensus state, the first stage, this category exists, where soul has, or consciousness has formed into the human form, first state consensus. And these are the type of people in your life that are born into situations in which they have a very limited scope of the nature of life. And so therefore their experiences are very limited to the very basic things. And as life progressively merges for these people over many lifetimes, they move into the state of awareness that would be considered second stage consensus. And this is mostly the type of people that will link the power of whatever towards following. Okay, I have to back this up a little bit, yeah. Consensus state means the mainstream. It means the state of consciousness that is linked with conformity, Saturn, conditioning. In other words, they have not yet developed the state of awareness where they question the nature of their reality. They just follow it blindly. So what happens is that a person will say, hey, by the way, these Nike shoes are brilliant, and they have these special features, etc., etc., and they'll be perfect for you. So the person will naturally say, oh yeah, I'll buy them. Okay, fantastic, and just put them on. Whereas that's just blindly following something, or giving a piece of information that might not be true for that person, yet they will take it on board as themselves. And so therefore merging and osmosing with a truth that is relative to consensus reality, in other words, everybody's truth, versus individual truth, in other words, the truth that exists for me. So it relates to Saturn, Capricorn. And inherently within this Capricorn archetype, this is what evolutionary astrology again allows us to understand, the nature of Capricorn, Saturn, 10th house, is that it's a state of consciousness, consensus, that allows you to have security relative to definitions. Okay, I've defined something. Remember, Capricorn, again, it's defining something through protection. When you exist within your home, you feel secure relative to your walls. And so therefore, when you look at Saturn and the consensus state, it is ruled by that archetype, because it's people that are existing within a paradigm of truth that fits everybody, right? Okay, and this is where religion exists. This is how God must be defined. This is how we tell you how it must be defined. Follow it. Okay, yes, we will. Everybody does it, right? And then at some point, you get disillusioned in your process and you recognize that this was a truth for everybody else, but not for yourself, through many experiences. And then what happens is that the soul will, through that experience, become more aware of itself relative to its own individuality. So this progression, literally from going from individuated, from consensus state, which is broken up into three, again, the Saturn archetype, conditioning, believe everything, I will go through to the second stage, which is just like osmosing or merging with something that inherently feels that it can be empowering to yourself. So these are the type of consciousnesses that will then follow the rules and regulations about how, will go to university, go to the schools, educate themselves to get themselves into what is considered to be like middle management, for instance. Now, again, I want to make it very clear, when I'm saying that, I'm not actually implying that every single person is in consensus that if you've done that. I mean that the process is that you observe something that is inherently higher than yourself, and through awarenesses of that, there is a desire to empower yourself through that experience, and so therefore you osmose with that. And then you become more developed within that experience, but yet you're still not questioning, and that's where the difference lies. You're not questioning the nature of reality, you're not questioning the awareness of who you are, because it hasn't manifested yet. And so therefore what will happen is that through that experience you'll experience many of those lives and then get to third state's consensus, which is the general understanding that now you've been in the system for such a long period of time that you understand the nature of how it works. And so therefore we can observe the nature of politicians. They have an inherent, they get born into situations in which the family structure will have an inherent line that will be linked with system power. Like they'll be able to understand how it works. They'll have the opportunity to integrate into the system. The reality around them will influence the nature of their consciousness and give them the awareness relative to being able to be successful in the system. And this is your type of politicians who are able to actually function within the system in a way that has proper power. Okay? So like I said, linked with politicians and such. And then what happens is that we move into what is called now the individuated state. And this is a Uranian function. This is the function of recognizing that one's individuality, in other words, one individual truth, is different from another person's. And so the quest begins of breaking free from the consensus state. In other words, rebelling from what is known, breaking free and individuating yourself and recognizing that you are yourself. And this is the type of people that you will see in the world that will be rebelling against everything and creating revolution, because their conscious inherently in themselves is not wanting to associate with anything that is also defined as conformity, right? So within this stage you have 3 stages, and the first stage is the most difficult because this is where all the judgments come from. Because once you start to do something different from the consensus reality, in other words, something that is everybody says you must do, and you do it differently, you get judged because the idea of what you're doing challenges their inherent security, which then creates the judgments because they need to then pass on something that is saying that you're doing it wrong, but in actual fact you're doing something individual and evolving the nature of something that has been crystallized. You understand that point? You're breaking the form, and so therefore the soul will experience much judgment, which will lead it back into wanting to then go back into consensus state in some way, or hiding signature, as it were, where you'll live a life that is a complete lie towards how you feel inwardly because you're so afraid of the judgments being passed down on yourself. And the soul can spend many lifetimes in this experience until it gets to a point where it's just like stops it completely. You get second stage individuated. These are the type of souls that have completely and utterly throwing off every form of conditioning to the point where they will exist outside of the consensus reality of everything that is known, and throw sticks and stones and bombs and everything that is associated with consensus, and they'll reject it. They'll reject everything because the necessity to be sucked into the realm of consensus is so intense because of the fear of loss of individuation. In other words, the losing of my individuality is so extreme that I will exist outside on the skirts of reality. In other words, the fringes of reality, because of the fear of being sucked in relative to the experience of judgment, relative to the experience of being conditioned, etc., etc., etc. And then what will happen is that you'll eventually evolve into what is considered to be the third stage individuated, which is a point in which your consciousness is moved, where this is the type of Albert Einstein type of people, in which you are allowing your individuality to be expressed. You're doing it in a way in which you don't care about the judgments, and you're allowing your individuality to be integrated into the society, creating what is considered to be the influential factor in the third stage consensus. In other words, these are the type of people that will be innovating consensus, because they're taking innovation and breaking free. They're allowing this objectivity and invention to be integrated into society, because their process is to reintegrate into society in a way that's individuated. And then what we have here is what is called the spiritual states, and we have the transition from individuated into spiritual, which is a very interesting concept because it's a difficult process in itself, because now you're starting to recognize that your individuality was still linked with the ego. When you start to recognize the spiritual state, you start to recognize and see the world from the soul perspective. Multi-lifetime story. It's not just this life on earth here, it's multi-lifetime stories. And so you're observing your life saying, hey, no longer are we existing within boundaries. See, once we leave this body, once we leave this physical reality, this physical perception, we start to integrate into ourselves the awareness of the totality of creation, which is everything. And there is timelessness. There is no such thing as time. It's an illusion that we exist within this reality over here, and so everything exists simultaneously in that experience. And so many lifetimes are living at the exact same time. So at that point, at that perception, that description I've just mentioned to you over here, when you recognize those things, you start to then heal the soul relative to its journey coming from out of the consensus state into individuated states with all the judgments and attachments and etc., etc. And you start to let go of all the ego attachments, and you start to align yourself, align your ego with the nature of truth, which is that you are source energy experiencing itself as a human being in this perception of reality. And you are a divine creation of that, and whatever it is that you are experiencing in this life in terms of your desires coming from source, and your ego is in alignment with those desires. In other words, you are then expressing who you are, and you're expressing yourself as divine creation. You are not searching, you're not attaching your identity to ego structures that have been conditioned on you. You have completely let go of the identification of the ego and allowing the ego merely as a shell in which you use to actualize yourself on earth here. So if your soul's journey was here to come to actualize itself, like myself, in terms of communication, then my healing factor for my soul's evolution, because I'm looking at my life now in terms of where it has been, in terms of where it is intending to go relative to evolution, and so therefore I'm healing my soul's journey through recognizing and imprinting my journey through communication, through objectifying it, through asking myself, why am I doing this? And so through that process, shifting my consciousness from the ego to the soul, right? And when I do that, I'm now soul-centered, and I'm observing my life in the many different dimensions that exist. And when you move into that space, you have transitioned into spiritual stage. And spiritual stage is an interesting stage because, again, we have the law of three here, the Trinity. And so what we have here is that the first stage, spiritual, is where that you have a small collection of people that you speak about on spiritual truths, etc., etc. And you just go about realigning yourself with your ego. The second stage spiritual is the people like Osho, for instance, where there is an aspect of your consciousness that is leonic, where you start to align your spiritual truths because there's an empowerment process. You start to align yourself with these spiritual truths, and you start to become the teachers for the rest of the people in individuated state and consensus state, or an individuated state, which leads you into a situation of glorification. So instead of using the spirituality for the teaching and aiding of people, you start to become aligned with a truth that is higher than yourself, yet you do it for entertainment purposes and empowerment purposes. And there will be a spiritual downfall that will exist within your life because you will recognize that at some point in time, the truth of what you were experiencing is only partial of the truth. You only are able to experience an aspect of the truth that is your direct experience. And so you teach aspects of the truth in your second stage spiritual. And this is, again, this leonic thing where you do it for the egocentric structure, and then you have the spiritual downfall. Third stage spiritual is the one where you're just about to get into the process of your consciousness is raised to a point where you are able to understand the dynamics of this reality, of this experience, and you're moving into the next stages. And so you're leaving this experience in that sense. And it's like a bell curve. Third stage spiritual, very few people in the world, for instance. I feel that a lot of people that are maybe following the work that I'm doing at this point in time, that are understanding the nature of dimensions and such, will be transitioning into a spiritual state. A lot of us are individuating, etc., etc., etc. I don't think many people that follow evolutionary astrology would be in consensus, simply because this is obviously an individuating paradigm of seeing the world. And again, this is only an aspect of the truth, not the totality of it. So yeah. All right, guys. I've chatted a lot in this video. I really hope that it sounded interesting to you. I really hope that you enjoyed the thoughts that you spewed from my consciousness, because that's what I'm doing. I'm just spewing thoughts out of my consciousness relative to information. I really hope that you, like I said, had fun listening to it. I hope that it sparked some conversation within your consciousness. I hope that it maybe allowed you to see things differently. At the same time, I really hope that it encouraged you to become more aligned with the search for who you are, which at then some point becomes an interest in evolutionary astrology. Check my site out, simonvorster.com. If you're interested in the services that I'm doing at this point in time, obviously look at all the information over there. Now you know a little bit more about the nature of how I see reality and how I orientate myself around it. So yeah, make sure that you check out all my articles on Wake Up World and such. I'll put the links in the description before and below. Hit the like and subscribe button, guys, if you've enjoyed this stuff. I will be definitely bringing you another episode of this. I don't know when. Maybe the next time I have this communication itch, as it were. And if you've got things that you guys want me to talk about, you know, just put it out in the comments below. Send me a message on the YouTube channel. Send me a message on my Facebook page, which is Simon Vorster Astrology. You know, send me an email, for instance, you know, and, you know, give me some ideas that you want me to chat about in terms of the perspective of EA and such. Lastly, what I wanted to add is that actually I've got a conversation I wanted to talk about, which was the Uranus-Neptune conjunction that happened in the early 90s. And this was really powerful relative to the fact that Pluto is now in Capricorn, and also that it affects the nature of our spiritual awakening. Neptune, spirituality, Pluto, or should I say Uranus, correlating to awakening. So this is an interesting topic that I think you guys will be super interested in at this point in time. I know that I've just mentioned, if you guys wanted me to talk about things, I've got some topics that I can also chat about, which are like this Virgo archetype, which is the natural separation from spirit. In other words, returning to the divine feminine. If you guys are interested in hearing that conversation, I'm busy writing an article at this point in time that gives us a lot of information on that, and how to reconnect with the natural way in which we are looking at the world instead of our inward judgments and criticisms. So that type of stuff's also in the works at this point in time. So yeah, I might even do those things. Lastly, guys, I do an evolutionary astrology school. If you're interested in learning astrology the way that I teach it, I love teaching this type of stuff, Sagittarius archetype. And so I have that on my website. I've got a sale at this point in time. Check it out, read about it. If you've got questions, email me, but I highly recommend that. So what I do is I basically give you about 10 hours worth of content teaching you how to understand evolutionary astrology, and then we do tutoring sessions afterwards as well, so that you can learn how to do your own charts relative to this paradigm. Okay. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to chat to you guys. I really hope that I haven't wasted your time. Until then, have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.